There we go. It's only 2 minutes past. That's fine.
We're live. So good evening, everyone. My name is Simon Mashevich, and good welcome to the Property Experts panel on the 1st of Monday, the 1st of November. Thank you ever so much for joining us. We had a technical glitch, which only Mark Zuckerberg would know about, which the whole system shut down on us just momentarily. But differences between us and Facebook, we're now live. So good evening and welcome to everyone. What I'm going to do, there's been a change of format to our sessions tonight. So what I'm going to do is introduce the panel members, but we're going to do something slightly differently tonight. And we're going to do introductions with our updates, which allows you to then be able to post your questions and we can answer those live tonight on the Property Experts panel. So what I'm going to do is get my schedule to put them all on live. So I'm going to do start share. And here we go. So let's go for it. So this is our new format. And before we make a start on tonight's session of introducing the panel members, there is a property investment checklist, which the panel members and I have been developing together. And it's something that you can download for free with the link below this video. So make sure that you check that out. And I'll be posting that link throughout this session as well today, so that you can just go onto it during the show. But without further ado, Teresa, would you like to make your intro and we'll go on to your slide?
Ladies first.
Is Teresa with us? You're on mute.
No, I wasn't going to give you that pleasure to say that. I am here. All right, so that is that my slide?
Yes, it's got your name on it.
All right, sorry, I thought there was going to be my intro slide.
Well, that's just your details, Teresa.
All right.
Just let people know how to contact you and your website.
Yes, it's all finely tuned, the show. Yes, hi, everyone. My name's Teresa Kaczmarek. I'm here representing the National Residential Landlord Association. So I'm here on standby to answer any questions related to, sort of legislation on the landlord front, and those are my details, so please feel free to email me. There isn't actually that much, because normally I do give highlights of what is happening in the landlord sector, and thankfully there's not that much to report this month, so I say that is good news. So I just thought I'd give a recap of some of the benefits of being a member of our association. So the top benefit has to be the landlord advice line that we give. We have online and telephone support 6 days a week, so you can ring in about anything whatsoever about landlording. So that can be health and safety, it can be about giving notice, it can be about COVID, anything. Ask any question and you will be guided with the right answer. There's also access to a vast library of documents. So, for example, if you weren't employing an agent, you could do all the management yourself, because we've got all the legal documents there for you. Or even if you have got an agent, you could use our contracts and you could give those to the agents to use, because, they have been prepared by specialists, and feedback from our members have been given with regard to the contracts. So they're always, they're always tip-top contracts to put in place with your tenants. We've also got up-to-date research and campaigns. So this is good, because we go out to our members and we ask them, what is actually happening in reality. So, what is happening? We have specialist topics that we zone in on. For example, landlords who are renting out to tenants on benefits, or it could be health and safety, or it could be like licensing in a particular area. So we do get a lot of information in the media about what's happening out there in the rental world, but with our research, we're actually getting it from the horse's mouth, if you will, direct from our members. So we're getting realistic data that you can tap into. And, you know, and it is interesting if you are looking to invest in a particular area and maybe you want to zone in on any research that we've conducted in that area. You also get access to a property magazine, which we actually did win an award for that recently in October, the best property magazine out there. And we were up against people like, you know, like the Witch magazine. So that is definitely a bonus. It's a really interesting information filled magazine that we get once, I think it's 3 times a year. We've also got a podcast. So this month, the topic was all about student lets. So what is currently happening in the student world. So if you're planning to rent out to students, that would be a really good podcast to listen to, because you're going to be getting up to date information on what is happening in that sector. And then finally, just want to give a discount code. So the membership is basically £75 up to 2 members, and there's another one for up to 5 people. So with that code there, you'll get £15 off. So that is my update today, and I shall slink back into the background waiting for some questions.
Thank you ever so much, Teresa. I've just slid myself into this panel deck as well. I am Simon Mishevich from Optimize Accountants. We're property specialists, but we're also expats as well. So if you are investing either in real estate or in business within the UK, then we can help you if you are either in Hong Kong, America, or indeed Spain. So we can help you in those kind of areas as well as the UK. So not much of an update from me other than your tax return. If you was to submit it in paper, you've missed the deadline. That was some days ago. So now you are down to the electronic system. I'm going to move on from my updates because I didn't really want to give you too much of a detail today and some of the old dates as well. So I'm going to move over to Paul Hilliard for his updates.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Hilliard. I guess I'm the father figure of the group, as Simon Mishevich mistakenly believes that since I've been investing since 1992, I must be older than him. Goodness me.
1863, I said.
Well, when you get to my age, the mind plays very many tricks, Simon. I'm a property investor of buy-to-lets. I've got a dozen HMOs, I've got 10 SA units, and I'm also a developer of commercial to residential units. I own properties overseas in Portugal, and I have owned a condo in St. Pete's Beach, Florida, so experience of the American market. I'm also the operations director for LMPG, which had 56 members when I joined in 2012, and we now have over 5,000 landlords who save thousands on their kitchens, boilers, heating, plumbing, bathrooms, paint, furniture, tiles, roofing, insulation, electrical, wall panels, carpets and laminates, building insurance and appliances, dealing direct with the likes of Worcester Bosch, Magnets, Jewson, Wolseley, Johnson's Paints, Baxi, and 50 other suppliers, including the latest member of our partnership, which is a company called Farron Taps, which do the, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but the cooker type taps. They are actually manufacturers, so they do a lot of OE equipment, if you understand what I mean by that. So, i.e. they brand other people's, they make other people's brands. If you'd like to know more about LMPG, then check LMPG out on www.lmpg.co.uk. We are the UK's largest and best buying group for landlords. So over to our special offers this month. Oh, thank you.
Sorry, but I do apologise there. I just cut you short. I do apologise.
So here we go. We do a weekly live event, and on this coming Wednesday at 6:45, we're asking the question: should you be switching power suppliers at the moment, and find out the tips and tricks to get the best prices from an industry expert who's going to be the LMPG guest this week. So if you need to find out further information on that, again, go to the LMPG website. Some of the following are the extra special offers that we get on a monthly basis from some of our suppliers. So this month we've got Johnson Paints. They're doing colours in Cover Plus vinyl mats, and for only £21.13 for 5 litres or £42.26 for 10 litres, you can get the colour, and you'll probably find that that's the going price or cheaper than what you can buy the white or magnolia for. We're also doing Air Pure mat, which is a brand new innovative bio-based paint, which helps you improve your indoor air quality. But don't ask me how, go and ask Johnson's Paints. And there's a special launch price of $59.59 for 5 litres. All these prices include VAT. From Wolseley, which are our plumbing and heating supplier, we've got some super special offers on shower enclosures. We've got 800 quad enclosures from 99 plus VAT, and 900 size quad enclosures from 105 plus VAT. Again, you've got to be an LMPG member to achieve those savings. From Jewson, extra special this month, they're promoting their Jewson tool hire. So again, if you need anything from a JCB through to, I know, Kango hammers, wherever you want to hire, or scaffolding towers, go and check the prices from them. One of our newest suppliers is CTD, Ceramic Tiles Direct, and they're doing this month Comet range tiles, which are a lovely bathroom tile for £13.80 per square metre, and the Eagle range of tiles from £24 per square metre. Again, check out the website. And finally, Electric Radiators Direct. They're obviously what they say on the tin, or their B-grade radiators, which are usually returns or slight scuff marks, or 50% off just for LMPG members. So have a look at that. That concludes me for the night. So if there's no questions, I'm off. Bye-bye.
For the night, you're not answering any questions today, Paul.
Yes, I am.
Paul, also, if you could provide a link from the website, whichever way it was, put that through the chat box, and I'll put that through all the platforms as well for you.
Finally, thank you.
Hello.
Tim, over to you.
Hi. Well, I was impressed by the idea that someone has been around since 1863, though that, in my opinion, makes you a youngster. The firm I took over has been around since 1832, so currently that makes me 189 years old. And I've got all my own hair, so I'm quite pleased at that age. Right, who am I? I'm Tim Bishop from Banalec and Bishop. We're solicitors who really understand property investors. My law firm, I've got about 65 staff, and we have a specialist property investor team acting for investors and developers nationwide, ranging from buying property to selling property, litigation, all sorts of things. And we also have a highly specialist leasehold team. Now, I know there are some questions coming up tonight about lease extensions, and our team is possibly the largest, most specialist team of its type in the country. So that's right up my alley. And apart from that, I'm also an investor and developer. I've done commercial conversions, I've got SA, buy-to-let and HMO. And I've just had confirmation from dear HMRC that my SAS, my small self-administered scheme, that's a pension, has now been approved by them. So we're now putting a small office into that and also buying another house for SA. So that's that. In terms of my update, actually, I've got nothing particularly to add this month. And for once in my life, I'm going to take the recommendation I was given as a child. If you haven't got anything interesting to say, don't say it. So for once, my family would be delighted to hear me shutting up voluntarily. And that's me. I'm shutting up. Thank you.
But you've got loads of questions, Tim, so don't worry.
Oh, I won't shut for long.
A lot of lease questions. So yeah, hold on.
Over to you, Ross.
Hi, so I'm Ross Maynard. I've been in construction for 35 years. I'm an investor, I'm a SAS pension holder, a landlord, a developer, I've got an HMO. And in my day job, for fun, I run a maintenance and refurbishment company, specifically run for landlords and letting agents. And you can find more about me at ross-maynard.com. So every month I like to go through and highlight a few live topics that I've come across in the day job in the past month. So they are, Simon, if you could move me on. I mentioned this one last month, price increases. Construction News are reporting a 74% increase in timber since last August. And now we're seeing that in particularly sheet timbers, plies, MDFs, etc. Generally, 23.5% increase in materials since August 2020. That's huge. Again, just check with your local builder or whoever you're using for your refurbishments, etc. Just a word of caution: don't poke the hornet's nest with them, and make them aware of things they're not aware of. If they're not charging you or telling you about increased costs, don't mention it at the moment. EICRs, this is one that came up this month for me. Interesting, EICRs, or electrical installation condition reports, you have to provide those as a landlord. The timescales on these are between 1 and 5 years. Don't automatically assume that because you've got an EICR, it lasts for 5 years. It's down to the inspecting electrician to specify, depending on the state of your installation. So just check, make a diary note for when it's due to be renewed. A little product news, StormDry. I've been using this recently. If you've got particular issues with damp or moisture-ridden walls, chimneys in particular, mainly older properties, this StormDry is a really, really good product. It goes on a bit like wallpaper paste in a milky white sort of formula, but after 2 or 3 days, it becomes like a polished car scenario. You can literally throw a cup of water at it and it will splash back like it would on a polished car. Check out the website, relatively expensive, but an excellent product. It's a use once, 25-year guarantee. And my next specialist chosen subject, which I've sort of been playing with for the last couple of months, I've actually looked at this for myself, is heat pumps. Let me just explain what heat pumps are. So you get 2 general types, air source and ground source. I'm not going to say forget ground source, but unless you live on an acre development or an acre of land, or you've got a potential to do a really big borehole, then forget ground source. They're not really practical for what we're trying to do. Air source, a quick science lesson. This uses external air to cause a refrigerant inside the unit to evaporate, and in turn that gas is put through a compressor, which then pressurizes, causing it to heat up. If you ever put your finger over the end of a bicycle pump and give it a quick pump, you'll notice that the end of your finger gets hot. Same principle. That obviously generates the heat. You transfer that heat into your heating system. It's the same sort of thing as your fridge at home, but it works in reverse. It's not new technology. I first saw this. I went to Germany back in about 2003, 2004 and looked at this. They had whole villages that were running on air source heat pumps. So a few positives and negatives, specifically for landlords, not necessarily for domestic dwellings. The positives, it's a very efficient method of generating heat. It's less maintenance. The units are a fit and forget. There's no real maintenance other than keeping them clear of leaves and obstructions. Obviously less carbon. They're safer as landlords. There's no carbon dioxide because there's no gas. And the lifespan is generally longer than a boiler. And then there's the negatives. So they're high upfront costs. I've been looking on the average house is, and don't quote me on this, but around about 10 to 15 grand. The significant work to integrate them into your system, and that's where most of the cost comes from. The actual heat pump isn't huge cost. There's issues with weather, and they don't work effectively at very low temperatures. And I'm talking sort of -10, because down to -10, you can extract heat out of the air, believe it or not. You may require planning, because the condenser unit that goes outside is similar to an air conditioning condenser. So you can't just bolt it on the side of a block of flats, etc. And there's no RHI or renewable homes incentive for landlords. Correct me if I'm wrong, any of the panel, but I can't find anything that says there is. And I've yet to find a financial case that actually works in terms of payback. So it's really an environmentally conscious question. There's lots of companies out there, some very large ones, some very small. If you're looking to change a boiler at the moment, get a quote. It may be worthwhile. You may want to spend the money. It's going to be forced on us eventually. So we all need to start embracing it. How that pans out in the next 5 to 10 years will be interesting. Just look at going all electric as well in your house or in your rental properties.
Okay.
Perfect. Over to Simon Hodgson.
Right, there we go. Look, okay, right. Good evening, everybody. So I've been a landlord and investor spanning over 20 years. I started out sort of learning about buy-to-lets in the year 2000
from a guy called Russ Whitney, who was an American who just sort of released a book out in the UK. I kind of learned very quickly then that you could gain more knowledge than the average broker or residential broker very quickly. And they didn't really understand the concept of how a property investor works and recycles cash. And that's really where I honed my skills and kind of took that on. So that's kind of me. Those are my contact details there. I cover all of these areas of, buy-to-lets, bridging, refurbishment, development loans, commercial building, semi-commercial, etc., etc. If you require funding, please reach out. So just wanted to give a little sort of tag on from what Ross was talking about. The emergence of energy efficient mortgages. So lenders are now starting to produce products that are cheaper. The cheapest in the marketplace is this particular one here at 1.99. It's a variable, okay, so discounted variable. Please do bear in mind that there are starting to become murmurs that interest rates could change upwards at some point in the near future. So, a discounted variable isn't necessarily the greatest, but it's a great product. Following on from there, 2.79 is the next product up, and that's a 2-year fixed with a great arrangement fee of only 0.5%. So that's a great little product that will work very well. They can cater for first-time landlords, etc., etc. So superb. And look at this, a 7-year fixed rate for an EPC grade A to C at 2.94%. So that's limited company lending, 75% loan to value, fixed for 7 years. I can hear Bronwyn's husband, his mind's going overtime. He loves fixes.
Certainly is.
Absolutely. So I haven't actually mentioned it to John Bronwyn, but and the old 5-year fix at 2.95. So rates are still very competitive. They've been coming down, although obviously that potentially could change. The Bank of England do raise rates, which they're sort of starting to talk about. The other thing that I haven't put in the slides, which I'm very quickly going to cover, I'm now starting to see with the end of the stamp duty holiday that residential sales have slowed, and some properties that haven't necessarily have sold, which are family homes, are popping up as buy-to-lets. Now, for us seasoned investors, we're instantly going purchase lease options. For those of you on the call who are less seasoned, speak to Bronwyn. Bronwyn is your educational source for purchase lease options. But when you see them pop up in both rental and sales, there's a reasonable chance that the owner of the property might be up for doing some kind of deal, which has not been possible. Investor sales are still very strong, so I'm still seeing that kind of go along. But the market has changed ever so slightly from where I'm sat. Right, that's me, Simon. We're kind of, the new format actually gone on longer, hasn't it? Oops.
Brilliant. Well, no, it hasn't really, because I think we're actually answering people's questions, believe it or not, in a lot of what we're talking about. But so yeah, it's great to be here in November. I spelt my name wrong, so it's BRON. Simon. So
I'm going to blame the editor-in-chief.
Both of them. So I'm Bronwyn.
Which is me.
I'm an investor down in Hampshire. I invest in HMOs, holiday lets, single lets, guest houses. I do short-term accommodation for council tenants and developments. And recently, yes, set up a company in Zanzibar, but that's for another time. Today, the most important thing you need to know about me is that I love to help people learn. So I also have an online learning program, which I will talk about in a minute. Now, what I've been doing in the last few months is providing a case study. So the next slide should just have a quick case study. So this is case study number 4. I've talked about a single let, my first purchase. I've talked about an HMO that I bought as an HMO, existing HMO. I've talked about an HMO conversion from a house. And this is the next step up. And this is Walnut Grove in Southampton. This was a property that an estate agent brought to me. I kept going into the estate agent and saying, have you got anything a bit unusual? And he said, I tell you what, I've just got this on my books. He said, I don't know how to value it. Will you come round and look at it with me? And that is God's honest truth. And you can see this, it's a very large house, but actually it had partially been converted to flats on one end. It was one freehold, very large garden, as you can see with that second photograph there. So with my education and my knowledge, it was very clear to me that there was potential here to convert to flats, finish the flat conversions that they started about 20, 30 years before, if not earlier. And there was huge planning gain to be made in the garden as well. So, of course, the agent was able to talk to me about the opportunity, and we were able to negotiate with the owner and, yeah, converted it to flats. It wasn't mortgageable. So the way we funded this was quite normal for us at this point in our journey, was finding investors. So we actually had, I think it was 4 joint venture investors. So we shared the cost. The investors put the money in, we project managed it, and hey, we got Ross in our panel here. Ross did the conversion for us. So he converted this to flats, did an amazing job, and we still own the show flat in this. So there's an interesting case study. If anyone wants all the figures, all the details, it's in my book. So if we move to the next slide, this is about my my training. In my book, I have 15 case studies. This is an Amazon #1 bestseller book, published year before last, and it's doing extremely well because of it's warts and all. It's all the problems we had. It's all the case studies. And yeah, I'll take a screenshot of this particular slide and share it with people on social media. I'm not going to go through all of the detail of my online program, but there is a link in the details below, which Simon's going to put in there, where I have a free 1-hour training session all about where to start in investing. And you can find out a lot more by watching that session. It's free, obviously. Okay, so enjoy. And we're over to who's left. Got I can't remember who we've got. I think that's it. Now we're over to questions.
Yeah, Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny's just joined us for That's All, folks. So from this point on, we are going to be answering your questions. So if you are watching this live, make sure you do post your questions and we will get to answer them. There are a couple of questions that have been put to us as panel members already, so we will go through those now. The first question is from Daria, who's basically said, about EPZs, talk about buying a buy-to-let property through an estate agent, but they said, well, you can't because it's got a EPC rating of an E. Now, what are those issues and how do we get around those? And I think to start us off with this great program, I think it's fair to go to Simon first and then over to Teresa, because there's 2 different insights here. There's one for mortgages, clearly, and there's legislation as well that we need to understand. So take it away, Simon.
Wow, I cannot believe how ill-informed this estate agent is. Whilst, yes, technically you can't rent it out, which does make it technically, in the very strictest sense, unmortgageable, but there are products out there that will allow you to buy this property, carry out the work, and immediately flip it into a buy-to-let product on the back, because lenders are starting to understand that this is a bit of an issue, which isn't a super duper hard thing to fix. There's a fair bit of work you've got to do. So chances are you'll have to do loft insulation, floor insulation, condensing boiler, windows if it hasn't got UPVC windows, or if it's a listed building, another type of solution. But yeah, and maybe a couple of other bits, but generally that's all you need in order to get to a C grade. But actually all you need is a an E or better. Wow, what an opportunity, because that will be below market value, because they'll be thinking they're attracting in cash only buyers. So you could romp in with a product which only requires a 25% deposit and bag yourself a below market value BMV bargain. Over to you, Teresa.
All right, yes, I'll give my 2 pennies worth on legislation. So yes, from 2020, landlords can't let out properties that are rated below E rating. So it's not lawful to do that. So unless you can get an exemption on that property, so there are some exemptions that you can register for, so you can look into that. It needs to be E and above, and the government aren't stopping there, because with the minimum energy efficiency standards, they're looking to raise that as well. So it's worth bearing that in mind with any properties that you have or you're going to invest in. So the plan is that by 2025, new tenancies will have to be energy efficient to that C and above rating. We are looking, there is actually a huge event going on in Glasgow at the moment called COP26. So we've got a vast amount of leaders from around the world talking about energy efficiency. So we should get some more information on how this is going to apply to the rental sector specifically, and also if there's going to be any sort of grant funding for landlords to, to meet those new energy efficiency requirements. But yeah, please do bear that in mind, folks.
I wonder who's going to be policing that event. Hey, over to Simon. You had your hand up. I'll go over to
sorry, I have a further point to add. Obviously, through the little update that I did, there are discounts now coming through on mortgages. So that if you spend out money making your property more energy efficient, you can then make some of the cost savings back in terms of lower mortgage rates. But also, we're also starting to see that you can rent the property out, have less voids, and/or achieve slightly higher rents by making your property more energy efficient. So, there are great incentives all around to do it. Absolutely.
Ross, would you like to give your penny's worth? Because I know on the WhatsApp chat you had some good pointers. So why don't you share some of the insights about how someone can easily upgrade their EPC standards?
Yeah, I think Simon's already touched on a few, but the one thing I would add to that is you're not talking to change condensing boilers, insulation in lofts, etc., etc. That's running into a few £1,000s. So go get some quotes, take it to the estate agent, negotiate. It's real money. If you've got some quotes in your hand, you can't really argue.
Over to you, Paul.
Obviously, the thing I'll add is if you're a landlord, which obviously you will be if you're looking to do a buy-to-let, come and join LMPG and you will start making significant savings, not only on your EPC related products, but on your kitchens and bathrooms. So check out the Worcester boilers and Baxi boilers, which they're the I believe they're the top two best-selling boilers in the country, and we are able to provide both of those at very good discounts. So don't forget LMPG. So thank you.
Thank you ever so much for that. I'm going to go over to Simon Hodgson, actually. Mandy's asked a question. Says, I applied for a mortgage to buy an ex-council house with a short lease, and the mortgage works rejected my application due to the saleability and marketability issues. What's the, and I'll go over to Tim as well afterwards about short leases and what you might be able to do with this particular situation. But from a mortgage perspective, short leases, ex-council houses.
Do we know how long the lease was? Does Mandy say?
She doesn't, unfortunately, no.
Okay. I've got a feeling she might have sent that question in early. And if I'm not mistaken, 85 years might have been what she said.
Yes, I think it was. Yeah, I will have a quick look now, but I think it was something like 85.
Obviously, Tim's going to dive into the short lease and the lease extension piece far more thoroughly, so I won't really cover that. But that lease can be extended. But for mortgage purposes, 85 years isn't an issue. So I would hazard a guess that the issue here for TMW, especially TMW, because they're a really vanilla type lender, and they really do like to be a very kind of average type property. So council house, it was probably non-standard construction, I suspect, or if it wasn't construction type, might have deviated in some parts of the building, but also owner-occupier concentration might not have been as strong as the lender wanted in that area, which is also another reason why they sometimes decide not to lend. There's enough lenders out there that will lend on it, and really that's part of, I guess I would say this, but part of the due diligence when you look at placing a case is to go onto all the modern tools that we've got, look at the house, look at where it's situated, where its neighbours are, and then work out who the correct lender is to match to that sort of jigsaw piece, and potentially that's possibly not been done correctly to start with. But yeah, it's definitely possible to get a mortgage on it with the lease length that it's got on it, but also extending the lease might help increase its value. Not as much on 85 years, but Yeah, Tim, you can tell us all about how to, or trigger clause 42 in the lease extension process, I think it's called.
It was 85 years, by the way.
Aha.
Said, I guess council owns 70% house in the area and the lenders don't like it. Difficult for me to get a mortgage. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, the owner concentration has been some of these. So our lenders will still do it. Okay. So the rate will be slightly higher than would be, the average. So if you're buying in a limited company with CMW, you'd be looking at rates just under 3% for a 2-year. If we took that to a lender that would be okay with it, you might have to add 0.75% on top of that potentially, but you can still do it. But what you should be able to do is buy that property at a cheaper price compared to other properties in the local area, but still achieve roughly the same kind of rents. Your yield goes up. So what you're paying extra in terms of mortgage cost is offset in the return, or more offset by the return you're getting. So quite often as an investor, they're not a bad property to look at, to be fair.
Over to Tim.
Oh, right. Hello. Right. First of all, just to clarify, was this council property, ex-council property? Did somebody say?
Yes, it was.
Okay. I don't run these cases. I think it may be different if it's an ex-council property, because I don't think you have the right to buy an ex-council property, but I will need to double check that. But broadly, for all non-council properties, it's a fairly straightforward thing. You need to have owned the property for 2 years. That's a critical thing. But there is a way around that, and this is what many people don't realise. That's if you're buying a property and you don't want to wait for 2 years before you put your lease extension in, you can actually get the vendor, provided they've owned it for at least 2 years, to put in the application. It doesn't cost them anything, just the application. And on completion, they pass over the right of that lease extension to you. 85 years, it's the kind of stage where you normally think about a lease extension. At the moment, they go up immediately when you hit 80 years. 80 years is always the worry stage, because there's an extra payment called marriage value. And that can cost thousands of pounds more. So literally the second it drops below 80 years, the price goes up. So at 85 years, it's the kind of time you're starting to think about one, but it's not urgent. Once it gets down to 82 or 3, it is urgent. And if it's anywhere near 80, you need to act very, very quickly, because it's very easy to drop below that 80 period. And literally you might find 10 grand more. It is expensive marriage value. And certainly, as Simon says, it can be tricky in terms of selling property once the lease drops down. Because for many people, if they don't believe they can get a mortgage, and although there are some mortgages available, and Simon has some limited availability, most brokers don't seem to think there are any available, and the vast majority of agents will say once it gets below 65, 70, you're going to have trouble mortgaging at all. That means cash buyers only, and what does that mean? Below market value. And sometimes people, if leases get very short, can really be shark bait. I saw one last week in central London. It was, I think, 7 years left. Very expensive to extend, but equally, if they don't, otherwise in 7 years' time, it will just be gone. And that was in Chelsea. So, anything more on that?
Well, I think Ross is in for some updates. So would you like to share with us?
Just a word of caution: buying council houses, ex-council houses, any houses really. Asbestos outlawed in 85 for the black, brown and blue asbestos. The white didn't get outlawed till 99 in this country. So again, asbestos is in everything. It can be in architects, it can be in floor tiles. Just be really, really careful.
Good point. So we'll move on to a slightly different subject, and this is from Diana. Diana says, if I need funds for a big refurb project, potentially unmortgageable currently, is there a lending product where I can borrow, then convert to a standard mortgage? My broker said the following: they could be referring to bridge to let products, but these are just the bridge with a guaranteed exit at the end. Simon, what's your views on this, where someone looking to do a development, looking for short-term finance, and then move over to a long-term product? What's your hints and tips?
Absolutely. So this falls under what I would call a refurbishment loan, which is effectively a hybrid bridging product. So effectively, they'll lend up to 75% of the value of the purchase price and up to 100% of the works costs in arrears, having seen a schedule of works and on the understanding that there will be an uplift in value, and the valuer has got to confirm that there'll be an uplift in value, known as your gross development value, or GDV. And the lender will lend off the back of the GDV and the fraction of the purchase price. Yeah, there are some lenders that will then flip that into a normal buy-to-let product, but I think potentially it sounded as if that broker might have been slightly mistaken and confusing bridge to let with refurbishment bridge, and they are technically slightly different products. But yeah, bridge to let, absolutely. Again, great for unmortgageable and messy properties. As we say many times, the more times you can, or more areas you can find to uplift the value of a property whilst you're buying it and then remortgaging it, greater your chance you'll get of recycling all your cash back out to move on to the next deal. Yeah, please reach out, whoever that was. I've got just the thing for you.
Ross is going to come in, but do you, Simon, with the advice that the previous broker gave, do you think they took a bridge too far?
Possibly did, indeed. Yeah.
It's getting worse. Sorry, guys. Over to you, Ross, for an update.
Yeah, I was just going to add, if you're doing development of any description, refurbishment, always allow a contingency, because without the best will in the world, a building is a building, and construction is not like building cars where you know what's coming up. There can be lots of things that will catch you out. If you haven't got a contingency, you're not finishing your project.
Yeah, indeed.
Good point. Paul Hilliard, we talked about heat pumps earlier, and forgive me, I didn't pick it up in terms of what you might have said, but do LMPG have a supplier list for heat pumps currently?
We do have a supplier. It's called Wolseley. They've got a climate division which covers these. And as Ross correctly pointed out, air source are the way to go, because ground source, as you mentioned, usually need boreholes, and therefore you need the land necessary. But the good thing is that this is explained in about an hour's webinar in the first one of the second series of LMPG's Meet the Expert. So air source heat pumps were explained in detail with the various options and various configurations. But basically, I mean, an air source heat pump, which I'm sure Ross hopefully will agree, is a glorified air conditioning unit. The problem we all have is that it is still the early days for landlords on this topic. So we don't buy enough of these units, so we can't get what a council contract price would be for that. We get a preferential rate, but nowhere near as good a price as we do on boilers. But there's an important proviso. Some air conditioning units where you've got, I think I'm right in saying, the refrigeration lines separate, well, they're feeding into the building, if you like, where you've got those, you can only have the equipment bought by I think it's an F registered gas engineer. So so just bear in mind in that. So I think in reality we have to wait until 2025 when the law comes in that says boilers won't be allowed on new build properties. So that's when I think you'll see a significant change. In the last Green Deal that was around about 6 to 9 months ago, there was a 5k contribution for air source heat pumps. But what we noticed in the marketplace was that, lo and behold, the installers increased their prices from 10k to 15. Just so happens to be the cost of the benefits that the government were allowing. The other thing is, you mentioned boilers, and I regularly hear of landlords intending to stock up with gas boilers closer to 2030. So that they've got something to replace their boilers, because it still won't be illegal to have boilers in properties, we assume, at that time. So again, that's something to bear in mind. But yeah, as Ross pointed out, heat pumps will save you over 50% of your CO2 produced, and they give an approximate 37% saving on costs. So, but they are tremendously capital intensive to buy. So yeah, I think watch your space. Someone mentioned electric boilers. That's possibly a route to go, but I'm not an expert. But I would say that basically the saying is that a 1 kilowatt of power introduced by electric boiler will give you 1 kilowatt of output. My understanding, again, Ross may be able to clarify, 1 kilowatt of heat pump, electrical supply through a heat pump, will generate something like 3 kilowatts of power. Is that what you say, Ross?
You're spot on, Paul. On an average 4-bedroom house, my quick calculation was about 9 kilowatts.
Thank you.
Cool. Let's move on from that, guys. So, I mean, Paul Hilliard's got some brilliant stories. Obviously, you know, he's been investing since 1863. He was around since when electricity was first put into properties. And boy, that was an exciting time. I'm sure there'll be a webinar on the LMPG website for that as well. Bronwyn, I'm going to ask you a question now. And this is come from Peter, who says, with the rise in inflation and likely interest rates, how does the panel feel about the impact on investing? What's your thoughts on that?
My goodness. Well, the media have gone a little bit crazy on this topic because, of course, there's no news, is there? And they're desperate to frighten everybody because COVID's sort of getting better. And so they're saying, oh, my goodness, interest rates are going to rise hugely. And of course, inflation's going up and it's likely to go up a little bit more. And so, yeah, it's common sense economics that interest rates may go up, but interest rates have been the lowest they've ever been and they've stayed low for such a long time. So even if they double, triple, even get to 1%, heaven forbid, a base rate I'm talking about, that, you know, honestly, for us professional, educated investors, it's really not going to make any difference. And even if it did go higher, you know, you've just got to do the numbers. So you've got to go, right, okay, how much is my mortgage going to cost me? Do I go interest only? Do I go repayment? What's the rental look like? Now, rents have been ticking up anyway. So demand is not changing in terms of rents. It's going up, it's going up, and it's going up. So the economics of rental and the demand is such that I honestly don't think it's going to make any difference to the professional investors. To the amateurs out there that think, oh my goodness, I'm not going to make any money. Well, that's fine because they're choosing not to get an education and get their knowledge. But for us, you know, yeah, definitely massive demand out there. So don't be put off. Don't believe what you read in the media, okay? Believe what you read in books like mine and what we say on this panel, because people are scaremongering and, you know, they're also trying to get business and do other things. So no, it's a great time to be investing.
Yeah, Paul Hilliard, come on.
Yeah, I'd like to remind everyone of the well-known saying that we quote on a regular basis here, that the best time to invest was 20 years ago and the next best time is today. So get yourself educated, have a word with Bronwyn, and yeah, get in there. The one thing I'd add about what Bronwyn said was that I believe inflation is good for capital investing, as it's quicker to raise capital from your equity if it's raising quicker than because of the inflation rate. So, you know, you'll get no money left in your investment far quicker by a higher inflation rate than you will on a low inflation rate. So
that's because of your age, Paul. You've had properties long enough.
Oh, my back. I'll leave it at that.
Oh yes, I love it.
Well, the professor took his glasses off and he's put his glasses back on. So he's got an update, the professor over here.
Thank you, Simon. I was trying to find out a quote in The Economist, but I'll mention that in a minute. I see this question coming up a lot, and I like big picture. And these guys are the detail guys. I'm big picture. And I think there are 5 things that, even though I'm a solicitor and normally I'll say on the one hand it's this, on one hand the other, I think there are 5 things that are certain. Number 1, interest rates will rise. They are at historic low. It's never been as low as that. It's rarely been as low as that in living memory. And in living memory, it went up to 15%. So I think they are going to go up. That's number 1. However, equally, no one knows what they're going to go up. The Economist was writing on this very same thing a week ago. Yeah, and this is probably the most educated magazine in the world when it comes to economics. And it was talking about the British economy and that no one can really predict how interest rates are going to go. But they will go up at some stage. That's number 1. Secondly, as we're already talking tonight, we're talking about regulation. We're talking about environmental regulation, etc. The government are now, both sides, political parties are keen on big government. We are going to be looking at more regulations for investors. That is another certainty. Thirdly, I think there is going to be more taxation on investors because eventually all money we're spending in all directions and on COVID is going to have to be paid for. and investors and developers and buy-to-let landlords are seen as an easy target. So I think there will be more tax. Next one, will there be a crash? Yes, there will be. There always is. Economies go up and down. However, despite all of that, I think that the rental market is strong and will survive. However, you will have to be careful. And so I think one thing it does say is be very careful about deals that are marginal. I know in the previous recession, people sometimes over-leveraged, borrowed too much, thought they're going to make loads and loads of money. But perhaps the trick is to take back a little bit, just make sure you've got a bit of safety margin. So if interest rates get up, you won't have a problem. Some will. Some people are overextending themselves, too many voids. So I think certain things are positive, but as long as you're careful and cautious, and as long as you plan, you'll survive. It's a good market. It's a strong market. It will continue to be so.
Wow, that was very well put together there. It's almost scripted, pretty perfect. Now, anyone listening in for tonight's show on YouTube, it is live. So please do post your questions because we will be able to answer those tonight. And I'm going to rattle a few off here for you guys. Bodum, welcome and good evening to you on YouTube live. Said, what advice would you offer while buying a property whose replaced windows has no fencer certificates? I think the investor is saying that he's got problems with the fencer certificate not being there. I guess there's going to be mortgage issues. Simon, so if you can come on to that, and maybe Ross, is there something that they can do as a quick remedial?
Ross, did you go first with the works?
Yeah, fences, like anything, it was brought in back in the 90s to try and control the exploding market of UPVC window replacements. Get a fencer recommended contractor out to have a look. You might have to pay them to do it. They can't, as far as I'm aware, you can't retrospectively certify. If they weren't fencer approved when they were installed, at least the guy can check that they're installed correctly and they're not likely to fall out and the fittings they've used are correct. It's probably all you can do. Simon, mortgage-wise, that's one for you, I'm afraid.
Yeah, in terms of mortgage-wise, it'll fall into the products that we've discussed thus far. So a refurbishment loan type scenario would be suitable. We'd take care of that. There are a couple of lenders out there that will also allow, if it's relatively easy to sort that challenge out, will allow the works to take place inside of 30 days and flip it straight onto a buy-to-let in some circumstances. So there's flexibility out there to make to kind of make that happen. As long as you follow Ross's lead, do your homework and work out exactly what needs to be done. That can be then put in a schedule of works, which we can then take to a lender and underwriter and convince them that you can do it quickly. No problem.
Ross, you've got your hand up again.
Sorry, Simon. My favourite subject when we talk about windows and UPVC windows, if they're bay windows, just be really careful that they've supported them correctly. If everybody's ever seen a Boeing bay window, which I mean it's actually dropped, it's because the UPVC isn't the timber that was there to structurally support it. So again, be really careful.
Okay, I think these certificates could be a real pain. Moving on. So the question that we've got from Suntok was, would SDLT be payable if you move properties from an LLP to an SPV? And stamp duty land tax we're talking about here is a tax that you pay when you are purchasing a property. So we have to remember that a limited company is a separate entity from you. So if you are transferring properties from yourself to a limited company, it's separate from you as an entity. So you will pay stamp duty land tax, but there is an incorporation relief you can have if you transfer your property portfolio all in one go to that company. That's a big old subject there, so I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but do speak to a tax specialist on that specific area. So the other side to that, other questions I had was, so another question was from Silas, was saying, if you buy your first property in a limited company, do you pay 3 or 5% stamp duty land tax? And that's a good question, because there is a 3% minimum stamp duty land tax, which is the higher rate, and then there's the banded rate. So actually, both answers are correct. You will pay 3% and potentially 5% because you combine the 2% scaled rate with the 3% flat rate. But obviously, the higher value of the property means that you will pay more stamp duty land tax as well. So make sure you get some special advice. I know that Tim doesn't like me to do some conveyancing bashing, but I'm going to do it anyway. There are plenty of conveyancing solicitors who use standard HMRC calculators for SDLT, which results in people paying too much tax when they're buying property. Some quick insights of what you can save on how to save stamp duty land tax. Firstly, is chattels. Chattels are the fixtures inside of your building. You only pay stamp duty land tax on the bricks and mortar of the value of the building, not the furniture within it. So if you can negotiate furniture sale, then do that because you could save some stamp duty land tax. Don't forget, if you've got a property that's got mixed use, so you've got a shop below a flat, then you've got a mixed use property. So that you'll be based on non-residential rates of SDLT, and you would avoid the 3% SDLT as well. We're seeing quite a lot of transactions at the minute going through that, whereby we're saving people thousands of pounds of just SDLT. And if you have worked with a conveyancing solicitor in the last 2 years and you've overpaid, we can help you get that money back as well. So there you go. Lily has asked a question. I'm looking at a grade 2 listing building. Where can I find details of what the specific elements are online? What top tips can the panel offer? Now, Ross, you got your hand up again. I'm not sure if that's to answer that Lily's question, or if anyone else can answer that, please chip in.
I would just say be really, really careful. Really careful. It's a minefield, depending on who your local heritage officer is, depends on how bad or nice that experience can be. I'm dealing at the moment with a 400-year-old house. They want drawings of windows, profiles, etc., etc. It's a minefield. Be really careful.
She wants to be able to find can you look online to see what the listing actually says before she buys it?
I'm not aware of that.
Tim, is that something you're aware of in terms of the details?
Sorry, didn't quite catch that. So
we look at grade 2 listed buildings, and it talks about specific elements. I'm not sure what specific elements are, but if there are particulars with regards to that grade 2 listed building, what you can do with it, what you can't do with it, or what the issues are, is that something you can find online?
I guess so. It's to an extent more as a planning issue, perhaps. I know sometimes there are issues with even the way you can paint houses on the outside, or certainly on building regs. I don't know in conversions. I'm sure some of the panel know more than me. It can be all sorts of issues if you're looking to convert a listed building. I had a look at a listed building recently, and I'm kind of walked away from it because you have to be so careful what you amend. You have to put the right kind of mortar on, the right kind of paint, or whatever. Yeah. But it's not really so much a solicitor thing. I think it's more of a planning and building regs issue, I think.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen with other people, I haven't bought listed, but I know that, sometimes the listing can be quite straightforward. It's in a conservation area, it's windows and doors, and actually internally, it doesn't matter. But for others, it's, it can be as detailed as, the coving around, the rooms, the lighting, I don't know, it can be all sorts of really technical detail, and in which case, whoa, that's going to be really hard, because when you refurb something, you're going to have to spend quite a lot of money, I would imagine. So well, I'll see if I can find out more about whether you can see this stuff online. But Teresa, you might, I don't know whether you know anything around this, but let's move on.
Well, Paul Hilliard's got his hand up. So Paul, would you like to share some insights?
As someone who was around when they first started listing buildings,
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I think it's just necessary to just remember there's 3 types of grading for listed buildings. There's grade 1, grade 2, and grade 2 star. I've recently, for my sins, bought a grade 2 star listed building, and literally everything from door handles through to, as Ross mentioned, types of windows, the profiles, they're all protected. We've even got an archway in the house that is specifically listed. You can get information from Heritage England. So if you if you speak to them, they'll be able to point you in the right direction of how detailed the listing is. But just remember, it's not just the building, it can be structures within the building. Hence, I mentioned my archway. On the building I bought, I've got a 1500, and it was 1500s. That's a summer house. And it's not anything glorious, it's just, in my view, a glorified bus shelter, but it is very specifically listed, and although it's falling apart, we are going to have to reinstate it, so which we'll have pleasure doing, but you have to be so careful. The thing is that certainly grade 2 are the main types of listing in buildings, so you're looking at I think it's over 90% of buildings are, if they are listed, applied to grade 2. Grade 2 star, which is mine is, which is an old manor house, then that's about 6%. And then there's about 2% grade 1. I've yet to come across a grade 1, except really old buildings that, churches and real old cathedrals or whatever. Generally, any listed building can be any building over 30 years old. So just remember that. So although you're buying it today, this one is listed, but you might be buying one that isn't listed. I bought one in the Birmingham Jewellery Quarter in the early noughties, and from speaking to the local planning officer and saying, "Oh, I'm looking to do this, that, and the other," by the time I put my planning in, he converted it into a listed building, which was a bit naughty. So just be careful that even though it may not be listed, they can list it very quickly. The other one thing is that more or less any building built in the 1700s, so places where I was born, etc. That's usually to retain the original features. They will be listed buildings. So it's even to the extent on the property I've got. I'm looking to put a brand new greenhouse in, but I've got to go for listed building consent and planning permission, because don't forget, most buildings that you put in your back gardens are either permitted development, and therefore you don't normally need planning permission, but anything that's listed you will need planning permission for. So just be careful, check out Heritage in England, and the other top tip, if you're looking at development, then I would say avoid. If you want to do any improvements, just be careful that anything that you do must be done on a like-for-like basis. So I think that probably concludes that topic.
Very good.
And to be fair, Paul, you could probably have lots of conversations over a romantic meal, candlelit dinner, talk about property with you, good lady. And of course, once upon a time, that was the only source of lighting for you. So, it's great to have some insights with electricity that you can share now with us on this very webinar. So welcome to technology. I've always asked the question, is when creating a new lease on a flat, what is the best lease term? Is it 999, 150, or 125 years? Tim, I'm over to you on that particular question.
99 years was the most common. It tends to be more like 125 year now. And 999 years obviously is often when you get end up the share of freehold, you'll extend it. So it really depends if you are a freeholder or a leaseholder. Frankly, if you're a freeholder, then you actually want a shorter lease, because in that case, you're going to be able to charge for a lease extension in due course. If you're a leaseholder, however, you want it as long as possible. So I suppose that's the issue. I don't think on the whole, certainly in 999 or 125, it's not going to be a major problem selling it, to be perfectly honest. 125, 999 is effectively freehold apart from some restrictions. 125 is not that different because most of us aren't going to last that long. But 99 years is less common. So really, I think it's a question of whether you're a leaseholder or a freeholder. If I was a leaseholder, you want it longer. If it's a freeholder, you want it shorter, really, I guess. The only thing I would say is that might be an estate agent issue. It may be that if all the other flats locally are 125 and you're offering at 99, it might be less attractive. You might be a bit cheaper, I guess. Can I just add one other thing on leasehold? Earlier on, I think I may have been slightly incorrect. And bear in mind, unlike Richard Branson, I always employ people much cleverer than me. On lease extension, I think we refer to flats. I was getting confused with Crown property. You can't do lease extensions. Council flats, you can serve a Section 42 notice. So I may have misled someone, in which case, my apologies.
Which team members listening into your show tonight?
They've got far more interesting things
They
to do.
emailed him. They told him the answer, probably.
So probably the double barrels that's in there. What?
Just staying on leases. I know leases become a big thing today, that and COP26. So leases, if it's a good point, Tim, because if you're buying, then you need to be aware of that. But also if you're looking to, as we did in that case study, create flats, you're creating leases, then there are different ways that you can create the lease to actually increase the freehold value. Okay, so think that example, we bought that property, we converted it to 6 flats, we owned the freeholds. If we create the leases, we have 6 leases under freehold. Now, if you're very clever around creating the leases, you could obviously shorten the lease amount to increase the value of the freehold. We didn't do that because we felt that wasn't really fair, but different clauses within the lease. If you speak to an expert like Bernie Wales, who was my expert and still is probably the best expert in creating leases, he certainly enabled us to get a much better freehold value when we sold the freehold on that property. So just a thought for more experienced listeners here.
And on that, probably the most critical, because we work with Bernie as well, probably the most critical thing there, apart from the length of the lease, probably is the ground rent.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, there's a lot of controversy with the ground rent, but ground rent, the higher you set it, the higher you're going to be able to sell the freehold for. But the problem is it balances, because the higher you set it, it can make flats unaffordable. Certainly, I know some flats locally who decided to be clever, put the price up, and actually created problems selling the freehold then, or equally the flat. So you do have to be careful. You have to get a balance. There has been lots of talk of change in legislation. The government made some wonderful promises. They're going to save leaseholders tens of thousands of pounds. Last year, the Law Commission reported there were 100 recommendations on lease extensions, 100 on freehold purchase, 100 on right to manage, enormous detail. So far, one single thing has been announced, and it's not backdated. It's only for future leases, so it doesn't apply at all. So, so I think when you do create flats, you can sometimes create value. The other thing worth pointing out, at the moment, the value of freeholds, purely freeholds, so once you've taken the leaseholds out, is less on the whole than it was. Certainly with all the government worry about supporting leaseholders, freehold prices dropped significantly, although they have picked up since then, but they're not as high as they were at one stage. But certainly, there is certainly a value there. But again, one last thing on that. People often, if they've just got one set of freeholds, will sell the freehold. If you run the freehold, there are quite a few things you have to do. And for an individual, it can be a bit onerous, which is why a lot of people do actually sell freeholds to people who do it on a regular basis and manage it professionally.
Thank you, guys. What I'm going to do now, because it's 8:10 already, can you believe it? I'm going to do a quick fire round session. So I'm going to just throw in questions as I see them come up. I've also asked a couple of questions. One question was, why do pension funds purchase the freehold of a property? My understanding is that pensions can only buy commercial property. So freehold must be part of that same thing, but it can be a good way of earning money in your pension tax-free. So you get money from there. Tim, you had a point on that one?
Yeah, one of the main reasons pension funds used to love it, and I'm talking major pension funds, is because of the predictability of income. With most assets, it's very difficult to predict your income. But with this, with a freehold, it's very, very predictable, because you've got a price coming in guaranteed for 10 years. In 10 years' time, it'll go by X%. It's all on the lease. So you actually know what the price of your income is going to be for something like 125 years. And there's no risk, there are no voids. So it's unbelievably certain, which is why pensions adore them.
No, good, very good point. And I've also asked the final question, do you need a group structure when building portfolio? No. So I'm going to leave it there, because group structures and tax structures really does depend on your situation, and therefore there's no generic answer. So I'm going to avoid that question from that point. Brian's asked, in fact, do you know what? I'm going to go on to live, because anyone who's been watching live is clearly going to be wanting to get their questions in. So I'm going to fire through this, see if there's any questions that I've got on here. Max Chung, who is in Hong Kong. You can't believe how amazingly late it must be over there. But Max Chung has asked Simon Hodson, it says, is it more difficult for a director to get a mortgage? And interesting enough, there's another question, which I'm going to amalgamate, is I've heard that the interest rates are typically about 3% more. So could you put those two questions together?
Okay. Well, I can answer that quite well. We can answer it in a couple of different ways. First of all, if you're a director and you are UK domiciled, is it any more difficult to get a mortgage? Absolutely not. If you are non-UK domiciled and not a UK passport holder, potentially you will make it slightly more difficult. It can be done, but it's not easy. Are the interest rates higher? Yes, typically limited company mortgages are 1 to 1.5% more expensive than their non-limited company brethren. However, you absolutely got to get independent specialist tax advice to work out whether buying in your own name or a limited company is the right thing to do. And as Simon and I have many a conversation, it's really individual. There is no one fit answer for everybody, for sure.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go, hopefully, a quick answer. It feels like this could go on for hours, and let's not make it hours. But it's just how best to maximize our money for the best yields. Should we all do service accommodation, or is there still room for HMOs? Paul Hilliard, because I know you do both. Ron, you do both. Quickly, from your perspectives, what's the pitfalls of jumping straight to service accommodation over HMOs?
Well, first of all, I'd say that HMOs are more certain and predictable than service accommodation because don't get SAs are short-term living, short-term letting. So it's unpredictable your cash flow. And the other thing is your running costs are significantly higher for service accommodation, but don't forget, so are the returns. But I'd say service accommodation more of a business. Specialist business, and rather than HMOs is complicated, but far more easier in my view. Over to you, Bronwyn.
Yeah, so again, get knowledge, understand the pros and cons, and there are pros and cons of both of them, and it depends on what you're looking for in terms of return. Are HMOs saturated? I get that question asked all the time, and in fact, 7 years ago when I started, I felt the same. Oh, can't do HMOs because it's saturated. Now, it is difficult. It can be difficult, but it's not impossible. So with HMOs, definitely the demand is still there. Young people cannot afford to rent flats. They need to share. And in fact, they enjoy sharing with other people. What you've got to understand is what's the marketplace in the area that you're looking to invest? Where is the demand? Where do people want to live? And how do you differentiate your HMO from all the other boring ones down the road? Get a planning consultant, a local planning consultant that understands HMOs and what the Article 4 areas and planning requirements are. And if you've got your power team around you, you can absolutely pinpoint pretty much down to the street where the opportunities might be. So HMOs, I have a number. They're my bread and butter. What I suggest for anyone looking at which strategy is to watch my free training course. Hence, it's in the link. But more than happy to share information. You've got to get knowledge to be confident in what you're going to do. Okay, Simon. Simon,
quickly over to Tim.
Just a real quick one. If you're new to investing, you will find getting an HMO mortgage slightly easier than a service accommodation mortgage. Lenders tend to want more experience before they'll let you have service accommodation. That's only because service accommodation is a fairly new arena, so therefore there aren't as many lenders lending into it. HMOs have been around for longer, so therefore they're slightly more relaxed about your experience before they'll lend into that.
Hi, at the risk of repeating myself, I think I said this last month, came across some fascinating research which said that the number of 18-year-olds in the country will be increasing by 25% in the next 10 years. There's a real demographic explosion of 18 to 30-year-olds. Now, with most HMO places being taken by young people, probably 18 to 35, that means there'll be 25% more people looking for property, and a lot of those will be going for HMOs. So I would say in the next 10 years, there's going to be a significant increase in the demand for HMOs. Once you get beyond that, demographics are changing again, but hey, it's 15, 20 years off. I'm not planning longer than that. So in the next 10 years, there'll be 25 increase of 18-year-old plus.
Perfect. There is a question that Sebastian's posted about first-time buyer looking to buy properties. Then talks about stamp duty, land tax, I think council as well. Sebastian, if you're listening in, it's probably better for you to speak to Bronwyn and actually book a coaching call around that, because I think there's a couple of things, underlining factors that you might need to think about how to develop a strategy, which I wouldn't have thought you would get on this show, if I'm totally honest with you. Reading the question, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, more than happy, Sebastian. I think we've spoken in the past, so yeah, just book in my 30-minute free consultation.
The question was, interesting enough, buy, refurb, refinance. With everything that's been going on, guys, with the increase of materials, the increase of labour. I mean, labour is now going up with a 0 on the end, and the lack of financing around the valuations. I've noticed that banks are kind of saying to the valuers, actually, we want you to put the value down slightly. Is there a risk that the buy, refurb, refinance strategy no longer works? Ross, over to you first, and then Simon to follow up on that one.
I think that's one more for Simon than me. Just as I said earlier,
from the cost of actually doing it, though,
yeah,
Ross. I mean, are people really adding that much value compared to the actual cost of work getting done?
I said last month, there's almost a perfect storm. You've got increase in materials. You've got the builders are the busiest they've been in 10 years. If you try and get hold of a plumber, an electrician, at the moment, you're waiting weeks, maybe months. If you want an extension built, you're definitely into months. So there is a perfect storm of a situation occurring that everything's going up and prices are rising. As I said earlier, contingency on everything. And, I used to say 10, I'd now say 20. I'd probably ask me next month, I'll say 25, the way things are going.
Simon?
It's still possible. It's definitely harder to do, no doubt about that. You've really got to be key around your numbers, as Ross was going to highlight. Make sure that you've got contingency written into your refurbishment plan for sure. Buy right, absolutely. Educate yourself first. Clearly, that's reaching out to Bronwyn, making sure that you understand the market, you understand different strategies, understand how to add value. Because you don't necessarily add value by just spending money on the property. It's where you spend it, how you spend it, the key areas, and specifically within an HMO, if you're creating a real kind of community feel within that HMO, you can significantly uplift the value and uplift your rents, and then value the property off the rent.
Ross, you had your hand up, but now Paul here, the artist, got his hand up.
All right. Just a quickie. I'm doing a quick refurb on a property at the moment. Spend was or property cost was around 600k. Refurb, as Ross correctly said, is very expensive. So what I valued at 40k is now costing over 60. But the sale value of the property, as long as you make sure you're making 25%. I'm looking at approaching 800k. So as long as the market doesn't crash, then there's plenty of margin in it. So just make sure you do the sums, and everything will work. And obviously, don't forget, the key areas that you need to look at are heating system, kitchen, and bathroom. Those are the 3 areas that always add value, and especially if you're buying through LMPG.
Brian's asked a question. Well, not ask. Oh, sorry, Ross. So you got your hand up again?
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to add one bit to
You're this one with your one of those golden cats from Thailand.
Well, I've got to get your attention, Simon.
You found the button.
just nail the scope. Just make sure you've nailed the scope with your contractor, because it's those scope slips and the expansion of the scope that always cost you the money. So write it. If you're not sure how to, get in touch. I'll show you how to write a scope. It's really, really easy.
Whilst you're on though, Ross, Brian's asked, I'm not sure if it's a question or a statement, but he says heat pumps, I understand that they are less effective than gas. Plus there is an issue of meeting new level C EPC requirements soon, which many landlords are saying that they have to change to gas to get above F. Any comments on that?
No, I can't see how heat source, heat pump is going to affect it. It's only going to, it's renewable energy, so it's only going to increase your EPC, etc. I'm not quite sure where he's coming from. Again, please get in touch directly, and I'll see if I can answer that.
And the last question I've got is Palm, or not last, but on this for you. It says here, I'm looking at a property, not sure if there is a Japanese knotweed would a surveyor be able to qualify this? And more importantly, what can you do to remove it?
Oh,
Great question.
how long have we got? Yeah, Japanese knotweed. First of all,
About 30 seconds.
I know it well.
First of all, go online and just Google pictures. Japanese knotweed is not a stable plant in that it's green one day and it stays green. It flowers. It's quite an attractive plant when it's in full bloom. But unfortunately, you don't want full bloom anywhere near your property. Get a specialist in, get it checked. Don't take anybody else's advice. It's a specialist every time for Japanese knotweed. Don't run any risks.
Simon?
Yeah, you need an insurance-backed treatment program in order to get funding on the property. Otherwise, you have got no chance of getting funding.
Yep. Teresa.
Yeah, there are specific boundary proximities that do help or make it easier to get mortgage, but yeah, a proper insurance-backed warranty treatment program is the belts and braces way to go forward, and the safest thing you could do, because once that plant gets near your property, you are in big trouble.
Yep. Teresa.
I did actually listen to somebody talking about Japanese knotweed recently, and it was fascinating because it's quite easy to misidentify it. And there is a company called Japanese Knotweed Limited who will actually identify it for free. So I'll pop that in the chat box. But yeah, I think it's good to get a good identification that you have actually got it.
Good.
There's plenty of pictures online. Plenty of pictures that will give you a rough steer and then get the expert in.
Yeah, if you have that link, Teresa, I certainly will put that into the main forum box. Tony's funds are put in here. What do people think about the proposed 4% stamp duty land tax surcharge increase from 3% that was withdrawn from the budget last minute? To be honest, Tony, there was a lot of things that was removed from the budget, which I was stunned about, namely the capital gains tax reform, which was meant to be aligned to income tax. Was it mentioned anywhere? No, it wasn't. And to be fair, listening to the boring budget because nothing really happened, part of the thing that I was a little bit disappointed about was Rishi Sunak, who criticised the government of 10 years ago of how bad the financial state of affairs was, only to realise that the Conservatives were in power. A bit of a faux pas. I wish someone would check his work before he launches it. So, I wasn't the only one who makes medium mistakes by spelling Bronwyn's name wrong. Mine is nowhere near the mistake that was. So let's go into Vernon Young has asked a question. Is a property held in two personal names trading as a property partnership subject to CGT if it transfers to a limited company? And similar question that was posed earlier about stamp duty land tax, there is something called incorporation relief. Again, too big for this forum to be talking about, but do get some tax advice from your accountant to talk about how you can move your properties from your partnership into a limited company. Palm off Fit it says, if you are a freeholder of a building with a commercial on the ground floor and a separate individual flats above, can you split the title between the two and convert residential part to a flying freehold? Tim, what's your thoughts on that one?
I'd have to ask one of my lawyers, to be honest. Of course, you can title split. That's not a problem at all. It's the flying freehold bit, the flying freehold bit, which I can't get my teeth around. I'm not sure of. Again, happy to contact. If you want to contact me, I'll run it past one of my specialists. But certainly, you can title split, flying freehold. Not sure.
Okay, Simon, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, and unless I've misunderstood the question, typically you would, the residential part you would create as a lease, and then that would become leasehold, so therefore gets around the flying freehold part. If you kept the residential part as freehold, yes, technically it's all flying, and then you limit the number of lenders you can take that to. There are some lenders that will do it, but very much limited, and the rate will go up. So the reason for doing that would kind of disappear a bit. So I guess you would, well, hey, independent advice, which Tim can get the guys to give, but you would potentially retain the freehold, create leases, and then raise funding against those leases.
Over to you, Ross, if you don't mind. I've got a point here. Someone saying, Peter Meek on YouTube Live has said, interested to hear the panel's view about infrared heating as a low-cost heating alternative. And I'm sure that infrared heating was talked about from Paul Hilliard. So maybe, Ross, you start, and then over to Paul to finish off on that point.
No, it's a new one on me. I'm not,
Over to Paul.
familiar.
It was a question.
Yeah,
it was a question asked a few months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A lady. Over to Paul.
Yeah, maybe we haven't got anything on it. Paul, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's something that's out there, but certainly not something that LMPG have progressed, because it's very little demand.
Okay, fair enough. Matt has asked a question. Please advise RE landlord insurance. Specifically, should I go for rent guarantee insurance even though tenants have a guarantor in place? Is there anything I should look in terms of conditions, etc., etc.? Teresa, I know that a while ago, NRLA, or back then NLA, had a rent guarantee insurance. They stopped doing it. But could you just describe what that insurance was and what the alternatives are now that NRLA might have in place?
Well, I will just start to say that it is important that you do get a specific landlord insurance for your property, because it's not like a normal household insurance, because, you know, you do have to plan for tenant damage, voids, and things like that. So the NRLA work in conjunction with Hamilton Fraser on that. So there is landlord specific insurance. And you were right, the rent guarantee insurance sort of went a bit wobbly last year during the pandemic, but it's back on. So I mean, I would say get a guarantor, get the insurance in, because the difference there is if you get a guarantor in place, then that person is in place and for, you know, during the term of the contract. But with insurance, like I would for myself, I would get the insurance. And then if I was really happy with the tenants after a year or so, then I could just shelve the insurance and just keep with the guarantor. But I think it's a good backup to have in place. But yeah, the NRLA do the rent guarantee, but the tenants would have to pass, you know, certain criteria. So they would have to pass referencing, for example, to get that insurance.
Perfect. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what I would say to you here is hopefully you've enjoyed the show. And if you have enjoyed the show, make sure you give this show a good thumbs up on whatever platform you're on, irrespective if it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Dailymotion, or Twitter. Make sure you give it a like, because it does help with the algorithms across those platforms. And equally, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel as well, so we can notify you of every week when I release a snippet from this show. So if you've missed anything, don't worry, we will be releasing snippets from this show every single week too. Bronwyn, final question to you, really, to conclude on our show. But obviously, we're getting towards 2023. What are you looking at as a property investment? And what do you think people should be looking for in the next 90 days?
Yes, again, a question that's asked all the time around, well, what's happening to the market and what's the plan for the next year? First of all, you've got to understand what's the demand in your investing area, what the strategies are that you already have experience in. And if you want to get into commercial, and I spoke to somebody recently who was starting out in investing and they went straight to commercial. I mean, it's possible, but you've got to get a really good education around the risks. So masses of opportunity out there. The market has slowed in terms of people buying, but actually more people now, I think, are starting to put their properties on the market. They've got a future. They're looking ahead to next year. It's a great time to buy just before Christmas, in my experience. So I'm encouraging people to keep an eye out there. We talked last time about repossessions. Sometimes the courts actually haven't opened. So there's been a lot of delays in the courts. But yeah, I'm always looking, and yeah, I think all of us in this room, in this virtual room, are investors in our own right, and we're all investing, I think. Is that right? Thumbs up, everybody. We're all investing at the moment, and we're all looking. So yeah, it's a great time to invest. So yeah, thanks everybody. Thank you to everybody on the panel. It's been amazing. We get so many great questions in advance. No matter, we've been running this now for a year and a half, and we will continue to run it because we enjoy it. but also we get great feedback. So if you didn't make it this month, you've got burning questions we didn't cover, you can come back to me. So email me, contact me, and I'll try and answer it. And if not, I'll contact the members. COP26 is currently the topic of the week, and we've covered a huge amount about being more efficient, haven't we? We've talked about EPCs, we've talked about air source heat pumps. So that's given you a huge amount of knowledge. And I've just bought an all-electric car. So there we are. I'm doing my bit for the environment. So thanks, everybody. The next meeting is going to be on the 6th of December, Monday, the 6th of December. So put it in your diary now, same time, same place. I look forward to seeing you there. Bye for now.
Thank you all.
Good evening. Bye.
Okay, I need to switch